Hi, my name is Officer Greg Morris. I'm with the New Berlin Police Department. I've been an officer here for a little over 8 years. I currently work third shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And today we're just going to kind of go over some traffic stop safety stuff, things to do, things not to do. We're going to go over a couple of questions that people commonly ask regarding traffic stops and why they were stopped. A couple of reasons that an officer could stop someone would be for a moving violation, such as speeding or not stopping for a stop sign. Could be an equipment violation, lights not working, or it could be a registration violation. A lot of people have questions on registration and, why are you running my plate and why did you stop me? Basically, the thing that we do out there is, especially on third shift when there's not a lot of things going on, is we're running plates constantly. Any plates that we see that are driving in front of us, that drive past us, we're running plates. We're looking for stolen cars. We're looking for wanted subjects. Those are the more serious violations. Some of the easier stuff like expired registration, suspended registration, that comes up a lot more often, and that's a lot of the times how we end up making traffic stops on vehicles is due to the registration problems that they have. A lot of times people will be surprised or intimidated even when a second officer or even sometimes a third officer will stop out with them when they've been stopped by someone. Usually it's nothing serious. A lot of times the reason that we would have a second officer there would be simply that he was in the area when the stop was made and decided to check up and make sure that everything was okay. Sometimes supervisors will stop out with us just to kind of get a gauge on what's going on. For more serious stuff, it's possible that the subject could be wanted. It's possible that they may have some violent arrest histories dealing with weapons or danger to officers. We may need second or third officers on scene for that. But most of the time, it's simply just the fact that there was somebody in the area and they wanted to stop out. So it's not anything against you specifically. It's just a safety issue for us and for you as a citizen that we have enough guys there to handle the situation. One of the complaints people have a lot of times when they get stopped by the police, especially when it's dark out at night, is the spotlight that we shine in the cars. It's just we want to light that car up as much as we can to see any movements that are in the car, anything that looks suspicious to us. We want to be able to see it from a distance instead of seeing it when we walk up on the car. So that's the reason for the light. It's just to give us a better perspective on what's inside that car, how many people are inside, and what they may be doing as we approach. A lot of times when we stop someone, they're in a hurry, they're trying to get to work or they're trying to pick up their kids or whatever, and they get frustrated when it takes a little bit longer than they think it should. Honestly, we try to speed up traffic stops as much as we can. We don't really want to sit there any longer than we have to either. But there is a process that we have to go through. We have to run your information, both your vehicle information and your personal information, through our dispatcher to make sure that they're all good to go. They're not suspended or revoked or have any warrants. So sometimes that takes a while depending on how busy we are. If other officers are running stuff through dispatch, it may take a little while, but we try to do it as quickly as possible. Once we have all that information back, we may have to fill out paperwork, warnings, citations, whatever that may be, and bring it up to you. So it may take up to 10, 15 minutes if things are going slow. If they're not, maybe a little bit faster. But just keep in mind that we're not trying to hold you there any longer than we have to. We'd like to get you on your way as soon as possible. One of the more recent laws that was passed a couple of years ago regarding traffic stops is the law that Wisconsin passed that mandates that when you're driving past a traffic stop that you're required to move over or slow down significantly when you pass that. It's really a safety issue for the officers. A lot of officers are killed every year by vehicles that strike them. Much more officers are killed by vehicle accidents than by guns or anything else. So when you're approaching a traffic stop and you see the lights, usually 95% of the time they should be on the right side of the road. If you can move over safely into the left lane, if there is a left lane, please do that. If you are not able to move over to the left lane because either there is not one or there's vehicles over there and you can't move over, please slow down significantly. I'm talking at least 15 to 20 miles an hour. Decrease your speed when you drive past. Make sure you look and see if the officer's outside of his vehicle. Just be cognizant of that and make sure that you're giving him a wide berth when you pass. Violations of this, you can be stopped if another officer sees you, or even if the officer that you're driving past sees you and is able to get into his car because he's finished with his traffic stop. You can be stopped and cited for that. It's a pretty healthy fine. And that's done, again, for safety issues. Again, there's a lot of officers that are injured or killed every year. So When you're on the road, just make sure you're paying attention, and if you do see someone on a traffic stop, just make sure you're getting out of the way or slowing down when you pass that location. One thing that happens once in a while to officers, and we just kind of want to touch upon it here, is if I have someone stopped and you drive past and you're lost or you have a question for me, oftentimes people will pull behind my squad and then walk up on my location to ask me this question. It's not a good idea. It makes us nervous when people pull up behind us and get out of their cars. We're not sure if it's some kind of an ambush, if the person that we stopped called a buddy, because they have warrants or whatever the case may be. It's not a good idea to pull up behind an officer who's on a traffic stop and walk up on their car. If you have a question you can't call or you can't ask at a later time, please pull up in front of the car that we have stopped. I'll see you there, and then I can come up and talk to you when I'm done with my traffic stop. It's not a good idea to pull up behind an officer that's on a traffic stop. So if that ever happens to you and you have to ask a question or you have to talk to an officer about something that you saw, if it's not an emergency, then go ahead and pull up in front of the stop. I'll come up and talk to you when we're done, and we can take care of any business you have at that point. If you're driving down the road and you see the lights come on behind you or the siren, first thing you want to do is make sure that you can pull over safely to the right. We always want people to pull over to the right. Some people go to the left, but we want to make sure you go to the right. If you can get onto the shoulder or if there's no shoulder, just go ahead and get as far to the right as you can. Stop your vehicle completely, put it in park. If it's not 1,000 degrees out or 20 below, you can just turn your engine off and just make sure you stay in your car and wait until the officer makes his approach and makes contact with you. Once the officer begins approaching your vehicle, there's a couple things we want people to do to make sure that everybody stays safe. First things first, make sure you keep your hands on the steering wheel or at least visible. Don't be reaching underneath your seat or reaching in anywhere. Just keep your hands up on the steering wheel. If your radio's on, turn it down or turn it off. If you're on your cell phone, just get off your cell phone. Just tell the person you'll call them back. If you do have to grab something either out of your glove box or in your wallet, or if your wallet's under the seat or on the passenger seat, just let us know that you're going to reach for it before you do it, and we'll say that's fine, and you can do it at that point. There's a couple of things that we don't want you to do along with stuff we would like you to do. So a couple don'ts. Don't make any real furtive movements. Don't reach behind your seat. Don't turn around, routinely, over and over again. It makes us nervous. Don't argue with us. I know some people want to argue their case, and that's fine. But really, that's not the time to do that. You'll get a court date on your ticket. If you have a complaint or you have an issue with what was done at the traffic stop, go to court, talk to the judge. They'll be willing to listen to you and decide whether or not your argument's valid or not. But the officer's going to do what he's going to do. You're arguing with him is not going to really get you anywhere. And the big thing too, when you're stopped, stay in your car. Don't get out of your car. If you have a question or whatever the case may be, you can talk to the officer when he makes his approach and talks to you. Just stay in your car, keep your hands on the steering wheel, and that'll keep everybody safe. People that dart out of cars, we don't know if you're running from us, if you've got a weapon or anything like that. So it's real important, just stay in your car until the officer comes up to your window and starts talking to you.
23, we're at 10th and Grant waiting for a tow. I believe it was called on channel 1. Okay, we have 482 coming out there for the hit and run. You might wait for him. Will do. 482.
Hopefully this information that we talked about today proved useful to you, answered some of your questions regarding traffic stops with the police. Just again, if you get stopped by the police, just make sure you remember some of these tips and do the stuff we told you to. That way we can make sure that the officer gets home safe and that you get home safe to your family.
Sergeant Ryan Park with the New Berlin Police Department. Been working here about 17 years and currently assigned to the Investigations Division. What I find, and it may just be kind of unique to suburban law enforcement, but law enforcement in our setting I found over the course of my career is very cyclical, kind of tends to go in waves. And our detectives, on an average, between 7 and 12 cases they'll have assigned to them at any given time. As far as cases being solved, there's kind of a range there, and it kind of depends on what sort of information you have when the complaint is made. Cases where there's a suspect that's named and you're just going to be calling people in and conducting interviews, those cases tend to conclude or be wrapped up a lot quicker than cases where you may not have any idea who a suspect is and perhaps you've collected some physical evidence from a scene that needs to be sent down to the crime lab. There's going to be other steps, and with those steps come delays where you're waiting on other people to do their work. So those cases will take a little bit longer depending on sort of the information you're dealt during that preliminary investigation. As far as the cases going to court, there's also a range sort of built into that. If it's a violent offense and we're able to apprehend the person that's responsible for that, that person, because of the type of offense, will likely be run out to the jail so that the rest of society can feel as though they're safe. So crimes against people that we're able to figure out, that person's going to be more than likely delivered out to jail to protect everyone else out there. And with that, the court process is going to start a little sooner. On property cases and other types of crimes that we work on, although they are crimes against people, lacking the violence, we'll put together our reports, conduct our investigation, and send that out to the district attorney's office. And then they have a certain set period of time, usually 60 days, 90 days, to review those materials and decide whether they're actually going to issue a charge against that person. And then they send that person a letter if they decide to go with a charge, and have them come and appear then. So the court process going down that path can be slightly delayed while there's that review of the information that's sent out there. There are computer systems that they utilize to compare DNA swabs taken from scenes in the form of evidence against databases. So for instance, the CODIS system, which is the combined DNA index system, and that is comprised of not only the swabs that people collect from scenes that get entered in as, they don't have hits or anything, their evidence entered in there, and perhaps they don't match up with a name at that point. So those are stored in the database, as well as in the state of Wisconsin, convicted felons submit DNA samples. So those are also stored in there. And so when we collect evidence from scenes and we submit it to the crime lab to be run against that database, it's computer-based. They do enter in the DNA profile of your evidence and see if it comes up with any hits. So sometimes we've had it where the swab that we collect actually has a hit against evidence collected from another case, but there still isn't the offender in the system yet. And so it can take a few different forms, but that's what that system will do for you. And then you later may have a hit if that person is convicted of a felony and provides a DNA sample. The print database called AFIS, the Automated Fingerprint Identification System, is also computer-based. Unlike TV, there's a lot of manual work, though, that does go into it. So for instance, you would take your print that you lift from a crime scene and you would scan it into a computer, and then you would manually, with the mouse, click on unique points within that print, within the ridges of a fingerprint. You then would select the top however many responses that you want that are near hits based upon how those points are spatially, how far apart they are, what exactly those ridges consist of. So it'll come up with a list that you kind of specify the reply, how many replies you want, and then there's a lot of manual work from there. Your print that you lifted from the scene still needs to be compared to the first person on the list, second person, and certainly I've seen it where it's definitely not the first person on the list. It could be number 15 for whatever reason, but the computer generates near hits as far as the prints that they have in their system to what you're running through. I think citizens, through watching the various police shows that have sort of emerged over the past, 5 to 7 years, probably more than I would like to believe, citizens are far more knowledgeable about different types of, especially like physical evidence, whether it be DNA or fingerprints. I think there's expectations almost to a point where people have the idea that fingerprints can be pulled off bed sheets and things like that. Where sometimes there are a lot of variables as far as our success rate for lifting something or for collecting evidence such as fingerprints. For example, with fingerprints, between the frosts is always tough when people look at their hands and they're all chalky. Those are times a year and a variable that we are dealt where your chance of lifting prints successfully during that time of year is a little tougher. So there are a lot of variables, but I think people's expectations from watching the show is that every scene is riddled with physical evidence to be able to obtain, which isn't always the case. Juries over the years, because of the shows and people's interest in them, have become far more knowledgeable about physical evidence, and really, they want to hear about that, and they want that to be there because they realize from watching these shows and hearing news stories that physical evidence, biological evidence, DNA, and fingerprints even that's pretty concrete evidence, and it excludes a lot of people. Sometimes the DNA, where you're saying it's the chance of it being someone else is 1 in how many billions of people. That's pretty powerful evidence, and people, I think they're looking for that when they become part of a jury. They want to hear about the evidence that they've learned about over the years. My tips for the general public, I know that the folks that live out in New Berlin or suburbs or really anywhere, you always want to believe that you're safe at your place, and we deal with a lot of property crimes out here in New Berlin, and our recommendations to our citizens and everybody out there would be, be sure that you don't leave valuables in plain view inside your car. Be sure that you keep your garage doors closed. And we read all the reports later, and people want to feel safe, but you need to kind of take those steps to see to it that you lessen the chance of becoming a victim. Because unfortunately, there are people that are roaming around out there that have various struggles currently, and that's the kind of opportunity that they're looking for. And so in an effort to try to do your part, that would be my recommendation, is to kind of keep things locked up, and that way you really lessen your chance of becoming a victim.
Hello, I'm Sergeant Kevin Turner with the New Berlin Police Department. I'm a canine handler for New Berlin Police, and I've been with the department for 14 years. I've been working with Canine Bac for approximately 10 years. I decided to become a handler back in 2003. Our current canines at the time for the New Berlin Police Department were set to retire. The position became available. I had always had an interest in dogs, growing up with dogs. Actually working for another department as an animal control officer exposed me to dogs. I feel comfortable around dogs, so it just felt like a natural fit for me. There's a lot that we train these dogs to do. Probably one of the most common uses that we have for the dog is for locating drugs for us. The dog does not know what drugs are. The dogs just know what the drugs smell like, and that's because we train them to know what the drugs smell like. So the dog can assist us in locating drugs, whether it's in cars, whether they're in schools, inside houses, say during a search warrant, even some outdoor searches we've done. So the dog is trained to locate drugs by either scratching or sitting, depending on how the dog is trained. Another thing that we train the dog to do is to actually track either suspects or lost persons. So it's pretty amazing when you can train a dog and then watch a dog track someone that hasn't been there for an hour or two. Oftentimes when we show up on a call or even training, we're told, okay, your suspect ran that way, and they give you a direction, and you give the dog the command, and you put them on that scent trail, and we can't see that scent trail. That dog somehow can smell that scent trail, and when you start actually just about at a running pace tracking this person, it's actually pretty amazing. Canine Bac is what we consider a SWAT dog. I am part of our SWAT team. I've been an operator on our SWAT team since about 2005. However, prior to actually joining our SWAT team, and shortly after I obtained Bac, we began to actually train with our SWAT team. What separates a SWAT dog from a regular police dog is that we have the ability to send this SWAT dog into a dangerous environment to look for a suspect. Now, without even having to go into, okay, what do you call a SWAT team out for? Obviously, we know we're dealing with somebody that's potentially armed and dangerous. There's times where we actually have to go into, let's say, a building or do an outdoor search for somebody that is very dangerous, not only to society, but to potentially the officers that are there. Similar to what we use the dog to search a building for a suspect. In a burglary, we can also use the dog to search ahead of a SWAT team for a secreted suspect who's hidden and possibly intent on doing harm to the officers that are coming in to search for him. One advantage of us being able to do that in a SWAT environment is a lot of these houses we've already put gas into, typically pepper or CN gas. Those gases don't have as much of an effect on the police dog as it does humans. It's nasty stuff for humans. For the dog, especially with the CN gas, they can actually work through that. So the dog can actually still effectively use his nose, actually search a building. Where we will not use the dog is in a situation where we know it's essentially a suicide mission for the dog. We know we have a suspect that is going to shoot the first person that comes through that door that comes looking for them. That's not where we're going to use the police dog. The dog is also trained in what we call handler protection. The best way I can describe that is, let's say I'm on a traffic stop or I'm out dealing with a citizen, and for some reason this citizen or suspect decides they are going to fight with me. This dog is actually trained to come to my aid in those instances. Now, it's not practical for me to go running back to the squad. I can't do that in order to have the dog come out to me. I have tools, obviously, on my duty belt, which allows me to take the action that I need to. But if I'm fighting a losing battle and I need that dog to come to my aid, I can actually remotely allow the dog to come out of the squad just by this little remote control that I have on my duty belt. Just pushing a button allows that back door of the squad to open and allows that dog to actually exit the squad and hopefully come to where I am and provide assistance by making an apprehension on our suspect. One thing I really enjoy having the opportunity to do as a police canine handler is getting to do presentations to the community. Bac and I have done a number of DARE graduations where we've been the guest speaker. We've spoken in front of a number of community groups over the years, talking about how we use the dog in this field of work. And really promoting good, positive public relations and letting people actually see this fabulous tool that we have that is so important to law enforcement, and that I personally feel we just don't have enough of that tool out there. So that's actually been a lot of fun. The DARE graduations have been my favorites by far to be able to do. The kids are always very interested and really enjoy those presentations, and it's an opportunity for the dog to always get to do something fun, because I always set something up for the dog that typically a drug search where he gets to find something and have a little bit of fun while we're doing that. So there is an awful lot that we expect of these dogs and that we train these dogs to do. One thing to know is that essentially everything we train these dogs to do and to perform for us is fun for the dog. Finding a bad guy, finding drugs, finding articles or evidence, all that stuff is geared towards fun for the dog. Really, that's how you best motivate a dog to perform for you, and to get them motivated and to keep them highly motivated is to make the activity fun. And that's what we do. So, those training days where we do a lot of training, a lot of exercises, those are fun days for the dogs. They love it. The dog is always excited to go to work, but especially excited when he knows it's a training day. And somehow they seem to know. When I leave the house and I leave wearing this uniform, the dog usually knows that it's okay, it's this type of day. Let's say a regular shift street patrol, because it happens generally the same time of night. But if I get up early in the morning and I put on a BDU style uniform or a SWAT uniform, that dog knows, hey, this is a training day, it's fun, and he's actually extra excited to go to work. So these dogs are smart, they figure it out. You have to stay on top of the training. They don't cheat, but they'll figure out shortcuts if they can. So it's been a real challenge to stay on top of that, but it's been a lot of fun. When Bac retires, which will be soon, he'll basically become a stay-at-home pet. He will not be able to go to work with me. He'll have to stay at home. You know, a lot of people say it's a well-deserved retirement, and it is. It is for every police dog who makes it through their career and gets to retire and essentially become a house dog. But you know, some dogs actually have a hard time adjusting to that new life. They've lived with the handler who they consider, you know, daddy for, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9, in Bac's case, almost 10 years. And after almost 10 years, or almost his entire life of actually going to work with me, this dog is going to have to basically lay there or sit there and watch me walk out the door to go to work, and he's not going to be able to go. So some dogs don't take their retirement very well. Others do just fine. We'll see how Bac does, but it's definitely been well earned. It's definitely going to be weird adjusting to not having that dog in the squad. That's going to be for sure. But you know, with that average lifespan or the average working career for a dog of about 5 years, we've been exceptionally lucky with this dog. You know, Bac was actually really young when he went on the street with me. He was only 20 months old, and he's pushing he actually is over 11 years old. So he's just had a long career. He's just been an exceptional animal. He's been healthy. We've been lucky to stay away from any significant injury, other than a little cut here or knocked out tooth there. But other than that, he's been exceptional, and he certainly does not act like an old 11-year-old German Shepherd. So it's been a fun ride.